The following is a paid commercial program paid for by the Dillon Gage Wealth Management Companies and does not reflect the opinions or advice of KRLD or CBS Radio.
Welcome to the Common Sense Investing, or CSI show, with Victor McClure and Guy Allard from the Dillon Gage Wealth Management Companies. For the next hour, Victor and Guy will answer your financial questions with their own brand of plain-spoken language and hard-hitting style. If you've got financial questions, they've got answers.
Welcome back to the Common Sense Investing Show. I'm Victor McClure, your host and the president of the Dillon Gage Wealth Management Companies. My co-host, Guy Allard. How are you doing, Guy?
Pretty good. One question for you, as always, to start the show off.
What's that?
Well, we're having our corporate Christmas party this evening. Are you going to invite our listeners?
I have no idea what you're talking about. Of course they
Should I give them the address?
It's at my house. That's why he's teasing me.
Open bar.
That's right.
No.
It's all the Schlitz malt liquor you can drink, right?
Can you even get that stuff anymore?
I don't know.
Wow. Hey, speaking of on the sadder part of things, we lost a former astronaut and senator earlier in the week, John Glenn.
Oh yeah. Remember that this guy I worked with for a long time, Bill North. You remember him?
Oh
right?
yeah.
Bill trained those astronauts back in the 50s or something.
He flew
60s.
jet planes back in the Korean War, did he not?
And he was a test pilot for NASA and everything afterward.
Oh yeah, he told some
So
stories.
he knew all of them.
He told a story once of having some secretary or somebody with him.
Say, be careful which story you're going to
say.
say.
With him in the plane. It was a test plane, and he was diving, I guess, trying to impress and trying to scare, and I guess he pulled it up within feet of hitting the deck, and everyone thought he did it on purpose, but it was not intentional.
Oh, it's amazing, those stories of those guys that went through all that.
He buzzed the San Francisco Bridge too once. He said he knocked a couple of his buddies off their stools in the bar right underneath there.
So no, he was a good guy.
Very
gosh, knew him for a long time. He was my fishing buddy. So we always went fishing. It got sad later when he couldn't stand up, because when you go bass fishing, you stand up for 10 hours or whatever.
He was in his early 80s, wasn't he?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
He still worked here when he was in his 70s.
He had quit smoking too for quite a long time. I'm going to guess 20 years ish, and cancer still got him.
Oh yeah. That gets all my family. I know that.
Yeah, you've got to be real careful. You got to stay on top of it. Make sure it's. How often you go get checked?
Oh gosh, once a year now, because it's been 6 years since I had cancer. So that's pretty good.
Yep, that's pretty good. Stay on top of it.
No, I will. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about Trump and the market.
What do they call it? The Trump bump. Now they're calling it. They come up with new ways to phrase it all the time. The Trump bump.
We'll try to break it down, because a lot of people say, well, it's going to be good for the market, bad for the market. Who knows?
Right.
The one thing that the market thinks would be good is lowering the taxation on the corporations. What do you say, lower it to 15%?
15% is his number.
Right now, the max tax bracket is 35%. And they said that alone can really help corporations.
And they use Ireland as an example, and quite a few other European nations, as that union kind of breaks up, are kind of following suit and think, Italy just went through their deal, and they shot down that new legislation, and the guy resigned, right? That he wanted to get a little bit more power, a little bit more control, and kind of like our current president, when they voted it down, he didn't feel that was a reflection on himself, but it was.
Well, I think they're pretty much saying everything needs to change. Nobody's happy with the way everything is now. But so, yes, if you lower corporate taxes, corporations are more profitable, which that's what the stock market is. On the other side, if you tax goods coming in, a lot of these companies have goods overseas, or you make them keep them here or whatever, it might offset a lot of that. So there's two ways to think about it. Lower taxes means more profit. Having to pay for more labor would mean less profit. Who knows where it shakes out?
Yeah, and without getting too deep into the political part of this, Trump wants to get a lot of things done. Probably most of us agree with a lot of them, and I would say very few probably agree with everything. However, they're saying that 35% tariff, which I'm assuming you're referencing, is one of the few things that he's going to have some opposition for, even in the House. So, if he really wants to get that done, if his group really feels like that makes sense, then he probably ought to get that done first, because what they'll more likely do than not is get everything through that they agree with, and then the things they don't, well, we can take a few years, we'll work on this.
It's weird how this political landscape. You know that both Democrats and Republicans have agreed on free trade for a while.
That's true.
And both of them are. Now one side's going the other direction, but pretty much they've all bought into free trade.
It's just like earlier in the week, Trump, I think, hammered the ex-union executive regarding the carrier deal. And the more people you listen to, and if you listen to both sides of it, those Trump and that union exec, former, probably have a lot more in common than they have against each other. If they just sit down and talk a little bit, they could probably come to terms.
Probably like that with a lot of things. But you just said a union boss and a Republican elected president
I know,
have a lot in common. Really?
Polar opposites.
Yeah.
You know, if we unpack that free trade though a little bit, because I'd like to hear your opinion too. You know, they talk about trade wars and all of that, and what Trump's talking about, and what the impetus, if you will, is for that 35% tariff. And maybe that's a high number. Maybe he's starting out high and he's trying to negotiate to something a little bit more reasonable. But you know, if you hear it in the broad scope of things, he's just trying to make it fair. You know, whatever tariff you put on our stuff, maybe that's what we put on your stuff. I mean, why would we have our stuff tariffed, if that's a good way to put it, higher than what we would have brought in? I mean, I understand, and Newt and some of the pundits, surrogates even for Trump, would say that what in Krauthammer was saying the other night, that even some of these policies may be good, but they're going to come at a cost. There'll be a little bit of a cost to get this level playing field. Is that good or is that bad?
Well, no, you're referring to China with the increased.
Well, that's the biggest.
Yeah, I don't know if the other places like Mexico do that though. But hell, who knows?
No.
I'm still shocked that he won.
Mexico's already talking. They say that renegotiating NAFTA with Mexico and Canada is going to be probably one of the easier things. They're expecting it, from what I understand.
Really? Yeah, I have no idea. The reason we're not political in this show at all, we're just basically talking about how does it handle your finances, and it does affect the stock market.
And since you can't escape this stuff anywhere else, we thought we'd just jump on the bandwagon. Don't change the dial.
I'm telling you, I was so exhausted after all that election stuff.
Oh,
I couldn't watch Fox, CNN, nothing for weeks. I'm just now a little bit, because it's still on there constantly. The same old stuff.
It's like the campaign never ended.
Oh.
Depending what side, what channel you listen to.
So, hopefully things will get better. Who knows?
But an important thing to notice, and where we started with this, was the Trump bump, right? They're calling it. Stock market seems to be doing well. Why is that? You know, people do seem to have a bounce in their step now, perhaps because Trump was able to get a couple things done, President-elect Trump, as far as carrier and as far as people he's appointing to his cabinet. So there's some optimism. And with optimism and some degree of certainty, the market does well. You probably have noticed that in your portfolios.
Well, see, around here, I agree. But like I said, my son, I had to call him off the ledge.
Oh, I know.
He's far left of Bernie.
But that doesn't, I mean, it's still his stock portfolio is getting some growth, and will probably need some planning and some adjustment based on what's taking place.
I think the liberals are all on the ledge.
Did you do a financial analyzer for your son and get him squared away?
He wouldn't listen. He thinks it's the worst thing in the world. I was like, oh, the last time he felt like this is when George Bush won and then won both houses.
Did he feel terrible?
Oh my gosh, it's the end of the world. I was like, it was not the end of the world. He goes, you voted for him, didn't you? I go, yes. What do you want me to tell you? He goes, oh.
But you got to be conscious of it. There's a lot going on. You can't escape it. Market is responding, and most all of us, certainly with your 401s, are in the market, and we want to make sure that, obviously personally, but also our clients and our listeners are prepared by having the right diversification, the right allocations, both in assuring yourself a pension as well as growth, but not too much risk with it.
Yeah, his tax plan, I don't know if it's going to be the final one, because they're talking about lowering personal taxes.
I like cruise
Right.
tax plan the best.
Oh, no.
It's not realistic, but I
Right.
like it the best.
Well, I think if you make under 150, 200, you're going to get lower taxes. Make over 450, you get lower taxes. But I think in between, you might pay a little bit more from the cursory look that I, looked at.
Right.
But either way, I don't want to talk about politics anymore. But just
You had enough?
I think I've had enough.
Okay.
I'm sick of myself again. What we'll do is let's talk about New Year's resolutions, financial wise. Okay. The first thing you have to do if you're going for the new year, max out your 401ks. You have to max out your 401ks. Any so-called advisor that tells you otherwise is not an advisor. They're just trying to sell you something. You've got to max out. I don't care if you have a crappy 401k with no match or a small match. You still have to do it. There's no way to reproduce the tax deductibility, tax deferred, and possible match of a 401k. And we'll talk about that more after the break, but stay with us, folks. You're listening to the Common Sense Investing Show on News Radio 1080 KRLD.
Welcome to the Common Sense Investing Show, where your investment strategy is based on common sense instead of some sales pitch. Here's Victor McClure and Guy Allard.
Welcome back to the show. Remember, folks, if you have any financial questions or you'd like to take advantage of our no-cost, no-obligation retirement plan, Social Security Optimizer, or information kit, don't hesitate to call our hotline at 972-715-2424. Again, 972-715-2424. You can always go to our website at ilovemyretirement.com.
You know, Vic, before we went to break, you were talking about New Year's resolutions. We were talking about financial resolutions. You know, it's January 1st comes around. It's just a good time. It's a reminder. You know, take a look at your stock accounts. Audit those. Make sure you know what the fees are. Make sure your returns are in line. Now, I'm not talking about the whole portfolio. It's easier for me, anyway, to dissect it. You take your stock portfolio and you compare that perhaps to the S&P 500. Use that as a benchmark. And the reason I bring that up, I was talking to a guy earlier this week that put $500,000, unfortunately, was into a variable annuity, which we know fees are high, so you've got to overcome that hurdle. But in the last 4 or 5 years, I think the account was down. It was roughly $500,000 account, and the account was down probably 15%. So it's under, 440 now instead of 500,000. At worst, that thing should have tread water because on average, not including or not including dividends, 4.5%.
4.25
with dividends. So minimum 4%. 5 years is a 20% increase. 10 is just simple math. 10% on $500,000.
4.25 for 15 years. The last 5 years has made much more than that.
Yeah, on average. So audit your accounts. Check them with the stock part of them with the S&P 500 and see if you're doing at least that well. If you're doing better than that, I would venture to say you're doing good as long as you're not taking abnormal risk with that and you're in real high risk stuff. And if you're not doing that well, dig into it a little bit. Is it because of the fees? Is there too much cost because the account's being traded? Is the manager not staying on top of it as much? We've got some programs that'll help you delve into that, and we can kind of dissect that for you if you don't have the tools to do it yourself.
Right. You definitely have to make sure you're not paying high fee things. You do an overlap analysis, all those different kind of things. And obviously we can help you with that as well. But remember, you've got to max out those 401ks. What is it, $18,000 a year you can defer?
Plus 6
for if you're over 50. That's
right.
The catch-up provision. So $24,000 a year. You can put in $2,000 a month.
$2,000 a month.
I understand that everybody can't afford that. But if you can afford it, there is no smarter way to save for retirement. It is impossible. Anybody tells you quit contributing to a 401k, only put up to the match, they're not helping you. They're helping themselves.
And if they tell you a step worse than that is not to invest in a 401k because there's better ways to do it, they don't have your best interest in mind.
No, you got to be really careful. I hear it all the time. Remember, I listened to some of the other shows a few weeks ago, and they were telling them to cash out IRAs, cash out 401ks, take the tax hit. We're going to make it up in a few months, blah, blah, blah. It's a bunch of horse poopy.
We talked about it last week. They start out their commercial with, if you have a 401k or if you're investing in a 401k, it will go down.
Right. You got to be careful with that. Put in the max you can. If you're under 50, remember it's 18,000. Now your company matches are all on top of that number. So you can actually put in deferral amount 24. Your company can match up to, I think, 54, so about another 30 they can put in there, right? So there's a lot of different things, and it doesn't matter that you don't have many choices in your 401k. Now, here's another part of the New Year's resolution. Besides maxing out the 401k, look at options if you're over 59 and a half. Let's say you've turned 59 or you're getting close to 59 and a half.
Good point.
Then you have a lot of options. So let's say you have that 401k that doesn't have the greatest choices or the fees aren't that great within it. You have a million choices outside of it. Now, being facetious, not a million, but lots of choices outside of the 401k. If you want to turn it into future income streams or you want to get it into ETFs that are more liquid than the funds that are in your 401k, there's a whole host of things you can do once you're 59 and a half. You don't have to leave the company. You're still going to leave some money in the 401k so the company knows that you're still going to contribute. Because if you're going to work for 5 more years, let's say you're going to work to 65. You have 5 more years, but I still want to get my matches. I still want to put my contributions in there. But I'm going to take out a big piece of the principal to do this other strategy. And
a real good example, if I can jump in real quick, other than teachers, very few companies offer you an option that will provide you a pension. Number one, they're not providing pensions anymore. And of your options in your 401k, very few of them offer that to you. So if you find one product that will provide you a pension, it's better most times to maybe take that money out and start that growth for 5 or 10 years before you retire. It just gives you, like Victor said, another option.
Yeah, a lot of people always, they try to come to us usually like, I'm retiring in 2 months. I need your help.
I know.
And if you could have come a few years earlier.
And I've saved $5,000, what can we do?
It's like, don't get me wrong, we can help you either way. But we can do it on pennies on the dollar if you could do it earlier. So if you can, to implement a $50,000 a year pension for you might cost X amount, but it'd cost 1/10 of X if you did it 4, 5, 7 years earlier.
And don't feel because you turn 59 and a half that you have to do what's called an in-service withdrawal and move it, because much like pensions, some pensions that are available through companies are done on old actuarial tables and are better than you can do anywhere else, and you want to stay there. That may be the case. But it helps to know you got to audit it. You want to be on top of it.
Yeah, most people don't realize that at 59 and a half, you don't have to leave your company and you have access to the 401k. It all stemmed from a Supreme Court ruling 10 years ago or so that said you can sue your employer for lack of choices. And they go, whoa, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Never mind. At 59 and a half, you can have the money.
Yeah, you can move it.
And still keep your 401k. So remember, that's called an in-service withdrawal, in-service rollover. Those are always options available to you, and we can give you all the different choices. Don't hesitate to call us. 972-715-2424 or go to our website, ilovemyretirement.com. Stay with us, folks. We got a break coming up. You're listening to the Common Sense Investing Show on News Radio 1080 KRLD.
Welcome back to the Common Sense Investing Show, hosted by the kings of common sense, Victor McClure and Guy Allard.
Welcome back to the show. Remember, folks, our retirement plan that we give our listeners free of charge, no obligation, will show you what your life is going to be like when you're 70, 80, etc. It'll show you what inflation does to your expenses over time. Because I tell you, there's no way your water bill or your electric bill is going down. That ain't going to happen. There is no way the taxes on your home are not going to go up. I understand you do have the lock at 65. I get that part.
Right.
But for the most part, everything goes up. My dad used to buy brand new Cadillacs for $7,000. Apparently you can't do that anymore.
Yeah, but that was a lot of money then too, wasn't it?
Oh yeah. So all of these things you have to put into play. Because what happens is you're planning for retirement and you need, say, $5,000 a month. Well, if you could do that, everybody does simple math on the retirement. They say, okay, $5,000 a month. I got $4,000 coming in. So therefore it's $1,000 a month. It'll last me 100 years. They don't factor in inflation.
Yep.
20 years, you're not going to need $5,000 anymore. With the current inflation, you probably need 8 or 9. Okay, and that's low inflation, by the way. That's about 3% inflation. So you're going to need more than you might think.
And we run the programs at 2.5 usually. We try to make it realistic and
that's right.
and err conservatively.
That's right. And you understand, people always think you can't have the market going up is the only way you pay your bills. And that's what I see these plans have written by financial planners at these other firms. They say, okay, you should be fine. We did a Monte Carlo analysis. You have a 91% probability. And I go, well, what if the market doesn't go up? Well, they said it will. Over time, it will. I was like, I want you to factor in a couple negative years at the beginning of your retirement and tell me what happens. They do it, and invariably it fails every time. And what you'll see is these plans come over. I just looked at one this week. It had 18 years without a down year, more than 6% to make this thing work.
Wow.
18 years. The first 5 years, you had a 70% return on your money. See, what happens is, folks, mathematically, if you retire and the market does really good the first few years of your retirement, you can do almost anything you want.
That's right.
You can stay in the market. You can do whatever you want because even down years don't affect you that much.
And conversely,
if it goes down the first few years in retirement, it's called the death spiral. There is no way you can recover. If you have all your money in the stock market and it goes down significantly, it is almost impossible to recover. But every time I see one of these illustrations on how they're going to be fine, the illustration's got these huge numbers in the first few years of retirement. Not realistic at all. Let me give you an example. You're going to retire this year. Market hasn't gone down in 8 years. It has never made a ninth year in history. If you factor in a down year for the next few years and then the up years, I haven't seen one economist that said we're going to have more than low single digits for the next 5 to 10 years. Otherwise, remember, it hadn't gone down in 8 years. You'd be averaging 20% a year instead of 8 or 9. It just doesn't happen. You're going to have less returns for the next few years to get the valuations of stocks in line.
I'm not laughing at you. I was listening to Harry Dent. You know who that is, Victor. They were showing some clips of him August of this year and June of this year where he was showing all the numbers. And this is just to show you that statistics, while valuable, are not the say-all, end-all. You can't bet your life retirement on them or Monte Carlo syndromes. But early summer, midsummer this year, Harry Dent, worldwide known economist, was saying that absolutely without a doubt, because we're 8 years into a bull market, 19 times earnings on the stock market, and all of these things are going on, without a doubt, we are going to have the worst fourth quarter. 2016 is going to be the worst year in history. It's going to rival the 20s and the early 30s when things were so bad. Guess what? We got the Trump bump now, and none of that happened. So you got to be, and the credentials are there, the statistics are there, and I guess where I'd like to go with this is don't bet the farm on any single thing that you hear. Get a good plan. We talk about it all the time. Make sure your income, your hard expenses are taken care of. Make sure you're in the market for your inflation hedge. Just make sure all your bases are covered, and we're more than willing to help you with that if we can.
And that's why the retirement analysis we do is so helpful. It's the most comprehensive thing I've seen. Just call us at 972-715-2424. We'll be more than happy to set one up for you. 972-715-2424. Or you can always go to our website, ilovemyretirement.com. You had a story about one of your clients that was 70. I thought that was interesting.
Just briefly, I was going to say we were talking about in-service withdrawals on your 401k when you're 59 and a half and you can move it, and if you don't have enough choices, and maybe if the fees are high, and there's different reasons, good reasons for you to do it. There also are some reasons where you don't want to do it. This gal was 70, still a client, friend and a client. I know she's going to work for 2 or 3 more years. One of the advantages of working and having your money in your 401k at work is you don't have to start taking your required minimum distributions until you retire. Had I said, sure, let's put that money in a pension plan for you, and taking it out of her 401k, now she immediately, or at 70 and a half, has to start taking her required minimum distributions. So we said, no, she left it there, and she doesn't have to take the distributions.
So it's not always the best idea to take money out of your 401k, but in most instances, it does make a lot of sense to at least look into it. Stay with us, folks. You're listening to the Common Sense Investing Show on News Radio 1080, KRLD.
Welcome to the Common Sense Investing Show, where your investment strategy is based on common sense instead of some sales pitch. Here's Victor McClure and Guy Allard.
Welcome back to the show. Remember, folks, if you have any financial questions or you'd like a free information kit, take advantage of our no-cost, no-obligation retirement plan, retirement analyzer, stress test, or Social Security Optimizer. Our number's 972-715-2424. 2424, or you can go to our website, ilovemyretirement.com. All right. The reason I developed this show a long time ago was to answer your financial questions. I read a report. Oh, gosh. FINRA has done this report. So has the Center for Retirement Studies, all kinds of the financial literacy in the United States of the 100 countries is right in the middle. We're right next to Estonia and Latvia as far as people understand.
But, in fairness, I think people don't read or learn about things if they're not really interested in it. And a lot of people just aren't interested
Well,
in
a lot
finance.
of times in some other countries, in school, that's required learning.
Ah,
In the United States, it's not.
not so much.
So, my dad gave me the Wall Street Journal to read every day when I was 10. At the time, I thought it was torture. It kind of worked out for me. But not everybody's like that. My dad, I was like, why am I reading this old person paper? But he made me read it every day. Hey, look at this. He thought it was so interesting. And I was like, I don't care. I don't know.
Convertible debenture, what's that?
So I developed this show to give you plain spoken answers to financial questions. These are things you can use right now. Obviously, we do this because we want business, but we also want to educate the public, because the more educated public, they don't get taken by scams. They don't do things like these idiots on the radio telling you to cash out all your 401ks, quit your job so you can get access to it, crap like that. The more educated you are, the better. So what's our first question, guy?
First question is, I have a conservative mix of stocks and high-yield bonds. I think I'm protected against a market downturn, but is there anything I'm missing?
I actually remember this. This is a question that I got. The first thing, when they said conservative and high-yield bonds, it almost choked.
Right.
There's no such thing as conservative high-yield bond, folks, unless you're in a lowering interest rate environment.
Well,
High-yield bonds are okay when interest rates are going down.
what did the term high yield replace?
Junk.
It used to be called junk bonds.
That's right. It's hard to market something called junk. Let's call it high yield.
I
Think
like
about it. Do you want something high yield? Sure.
Potential.
Do you want something called junk? No.
No.
But that's what it is. High yield bonds are junk bonds. You are loaning money. Instead of loaning money to a person, you're loaning money to a corporation. And these are corporations with bad credit.
If they had good credit, they wouldn't be high yield bonds.
That's right. Somebody goes, well, this is a different kind of company. They just want to pay more. Really?
Yeah.
You mean if the bank would loan it at 2%, they're going to pay you at 6%? Does that make any sense at all? This show's called the Common Sense Investing Show because you really think about what they are. People don't realize really what a bond is. A bond is just debt. In other words, you're loaning money to a company. When you buy a government bond, you're loaning money to the U.S. government in return for your principal payments, principal and interest, or interest payments and your principal at the end of the term. Well, anything that's high yield is going to pay more because they have to. They don't have good credit. It's like you buying a home. Let's say the going rate's 3.5 and they give you a 4.5 rate. That's because your credit's not that great. Same thing with these. And there's also no collateral requirements. In other words, I can do a bond thing. I can do it for my company that I own right now. I'm going to put out $100 million in bonds. What is your company worth? $100 million? Never mind that. Just go with the bond. See what I'm saying?
If I get the $100 million, it will be. Yeah.
But that's what they do. It's just high yield bonds are like that. Now, when interest rates are going up, bonds go down. The hardest hit bonds are going to be your high yield bonds.
They're going to move the most.
That's right. They're going to take the biggest losses. So you can't have high yield bonds as your default against stocks. And right now, especially, because the market hasn't gone down in 8 years. By the way, it's never made a ninth in history. It may make a ninth this year, just this Trump thing. You never know.
It might.
But it eventually will have a down year.
Indeed.
But interest rates, I think most people wouldn't even argue the fact they're going to go up. Some people would argue they're going to go up sharper than I think they will. I think they'll go up, but gradual. But still, that could really kill a high-yield bond portfolio. And most of these high-yield bond portfolios, especially if they're yielding quite a bit, are long-term bonds. So what gets hit the worst? The longest term always gets hit the worst. And highest yield gets hit the worst. So my opinion, right now, I would really lower any allocation of high-yield bonds or long bonds.
And again,
even investment grade, long bonds.
If the bond doesn't default and you hold it to term, 15 years, 20, 30 years, you should be fine. But think about it. An easy way that helped me understand this, 30 years ago when I was starting is if you had a bond right now that was paying you 3%, and you're not going to hold it for term. You want to sell that bond to use the money to do something, and your bond's paying you, what we say, 3%.
Sure.
New bonds are at 3.5%. Well, I can take my 50,000 and buy yours that you're trying to liquidate at 3, or I can get a brand new one for 3.5. So what do you have to do with your 3% bond? You have to discount it. $1,000 increments. You've got to discount it so it's equivalent to the 3.5% bond, which will now entice buyers to buy yours. Otherwise, you could not even liquidate it.
That's right. And bonds aren't like stocks, where it's got to have the other side of the transaction.
Yep. Market makers.
That's right. Like you'll see a lot of brokerage companies actually take the other side of transactions then liquidate. They don't do that in bonds. You have to have the other side. Okay. So high yield bonds, long-term bonds, probably not the best place right now, and not until these interest rates normalize. I'm saying normalize instead of increase because I think it's going to be a gradual increase.
And briefly, one other thing about that portfolio, it sounds like they had a conservative mix of stocks. We'll take them at their word when they said conservative, although conservative bonds not the case. But you need to take a look at their income. What's needed? What do they have coming in? What's their Social Security? Do they have pensions? Is there a shortcoming there? Maybe they need something other than the high yield bonds that'll take care of that income piece for them.
You got to make sure that mix is really diversified too. I've had people say they're diversified and they're in one technology mutual fund.
But it's a good one.
That's right. It's a real good one. Or they have 5 stocks and they think they're different industries, but they're really not. But that's not here nor there. Stay with us, folks. We got a break coming up. You're listening to the Common Sense Investing Show on News Radio 1080 KRLD.
Welcome back to the Common Sense Investing Show, hosted by the kings of common sense, Victor McClure and Guy Allard.
Welcome back to the show. Remember, if you'd like to take advantage of our no-cost, no-obligation retirement plan or an information kit, you might have heard our, 7% annuities are still, I think, getting real close. There was 1 or 2 left, bunch of more 6s and some 5s. Don't hesitate to call our hotline at 972-715-2424. Again, 972-715-2424, or always go to our website at ilovemyretirement.com. We're in the middle of answering your financial questions. Remember, these questions come in from personal interviews with prospective clients, or we have questions that come on the air and the emails. Anytime we find one we think is going to appeal to a mass audience, we're going to share them with you. We always take away the names, and just to protect the innocent. All right, what's our next question?
And I'll add real quickly, if you have some questions that we haven't gotten to, please go to ilovemyretirement.com, send it in. We'll be happy to answer them, and we'll put them in the queue. All right, next question is, an oldie but a goodie. Can you go over again why I shouldn't put rental property inside of my IRA?
We've talked about this, quite a bit before because there's so many. What happens is, remember when oil and gas was doing real good, everybody's advertising oil deals everywhere, right? And what's been the hottest thing the last 5 or 6 years? Real estate. I looked at Zillow on my house, and I'm like, holy moly, this can't be right.
I tell you, life settlements were right up there for a while.
Life settlements were up there for a while. Well, now it's rental properties. And what they're finding is a lot of people have a large portion of their wealth in retirement accounts. So now they started going after them. Even now, but some of them, because there's new regulations coming, I started getting away from that, telling people to cash out your IRAs and all this, then buy our real estate. But just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. Real estate is not a good place for an IRA. Okay, let me tell you why. You got to pay for cash for the property. You cannot finance it. If you finance it, you have to pay unrelated business taxable income and pay taxes when you take the money out of the IRA. So you get double tax, or any rental income also has to be taxed if you have a mortgage on it.
Sounds like their accountant's going to get more money.
That's right. Remember, when you take money out, you'll be taxed again at ordinary income tax rates. Just remember that. Landlords usually, if you're a landlord of a property, if it's not an IRA, you can take write-offs like depreciation, property taxes, other expenses.
Doesn't help here.
You cannot do that in an IRA. Even if you want to do some work yourself, you have to pay someone to do the work if you have it in an IRA. You don't have to do this, folks. You could do it yourself. But if they ever catch you, all of a sudden, if you put $500,000 IRA in real estate, you're going to owe taxes on $500,000, which could be $230,000 plus a penalty if you're under
If
59.
you're using other money for repairs and
That's
to help
right.
your IRA investment.
You can't. Let's say you put in all your 401k, which these guys don't care. When you got these investment companies, you put it all in there, and you need a $20,000 air conditioning. You can't pay for it. It has to come out of an IRA.
Exactly.
And if it does not, you're screwed. All right. Also, let's say you get 70 and you still have this in your IRA. How are you going to take RMDs out of that?
Yeah.
Required minimum distribution is going to require you to take out so much out of that account. You can't. A piece of real estate is not a piggy bank. You can't just take 4 or 5% a year out of it, but you have to when it's in an IRA. And so, don't buy real estate in an IRA. It's just not a good idea. I understand you can, in certain circumstances, do it, but it does not make sense most of the time.
And another red flag, we've talked about it in other segments of the show. This kind of indicates it too. But again, just for clarity's sake, if anyone for any investment suggests that you should sell or liquidate your IRA or your 401k to get into the investment, and I hate to be a blanket statement, right? Because there's usually an exception, but almost regardless of what it is, that should be a huge red flag, because you're going to lose roughly 30 or 40% in taxes. If you have to come out of your IRA to get into this investment to begin with, something's wrong. I mean, there's a whole lot of red flags there that would just worry me.
I had somebody argue with me one time. They said, no, I can cash it out. I already talked to the 401k provider, and they said they're only going to deduct 25%.
Oh, yeah. They're going to withhold 25%.
Yeah, withhold 25%.
Right.
I go, yeah, that's not your taxes, though. Yes, it is my tax. I go, they by law have to withhold if you're going to roll it out, if you're going to cash it out, 25%. But think about it. If you cash out a $500,000 IRA, all that means is if you make $100,000 now, the IRS sees you making $600,000.
$600,000.
So tell me what the tax rate on $600,000 income is.
Even with the new rates, it won't be that great, will it?
No, it's going to be a lot more than 25. So they're going to take the 25. You're going to spend this money, and you're going to owe another 10, 15, 20% taxes. That's the problems you have. There are so many potential issues with using real estate in an IRA. And I see it every day. People still do it all the time because these real estate shows tell you to do it.
And now let's take that a step further. Just because you can use your money in your IRA and you don't have to cash it out for an investment, that, and we've told you this before, but I want to share it with you again, doesn't mean it's a good investment. There's all sorts of custodians. There's one in Waco, all over the place for high fees. They're a custodian. Your account's with them. It's still an IRA, but they allow you to invest in crazy things like futures, life settlements, all sorts, almost anything you want to invest in. They'll take your money and let you risk the heck out of it, and let them be the custodian.
Well, self-directed IRA means self-directed. It doesn't matter that some idiot might have directed you to do this deal, this bad investment. Remember, look at all the life settlement stuff they did.
Oh, yeah.
Those were terrible investments.
They're in court all over now.
Oh, my gosh. I think every state in the United States sued them.
Yep.
And so they don't hear about it anymore. All right. I want to thank everybody for listening to the show today. Remember, if you have any financial questions or you'd like to take advantage of a portfolio review, stress test, retirement plan, Social Security Optimizer, or anything else, call us at 972-715-2424, or you can go to ilovemyretirement.com. I'm Victor McClure. For Guy Allert, we always appreciate your time.
The preceding show was paid for by the Dillon Gage Wealth Management Companies and Victor McClure, and is for informational purposes only and not a solicitation or representation of any particular investment product or service. Any views and opinions do not constitute financial, legal, or tax advice. Consult with your appropriate professionals before making any investment or savings decisions. Always consider your risk tolerance, time horizon, and objectives to make any financial decisions. There is never any guarantee of future success or performance.
The preceding was a paid commercial program paid for by the Dillon Gage Wealth Management Companies and does not reflect the opinions or advice